Me?
Yes. You. Come closer. Give me a home worthy for me to set my feet upon, and you shall be rewarded.
How are you talking to me?
Telepathy, of course. A simple being like you wouldn't get it. Now go. Build me a castle.
Honey, are you imagining that you're talking to the spider telepathically again?
No.
You need therapy.
Hobby therapy.
What was that?
Nothing, honey.
So I have this tarantula at home, but every time I look at her terrarium, it feels like something's missing. So let's fix that. So after cutting out a 1-to-1 foam board square as a guide and sketching the floor plan, I can start planning for real. The circle you see here in the middle is her current lair. The rest?
It's free real estate.
I'm thinking of making a staircase right here, and then leaving the rest as plain dirt. I'm gonna make some pillars to add to the diorama so it won't look too plain. I'm using Black Magic Crafts method of making pillars, so I can't take credit for the idea. But if you want a more in-depth guide of how to make them, go check his video, it's really good. But the short version is, you start with cutting a bunch of squares. Like, I'm talking a crap ton. Now that I have all the squares I need, it's time to take a small file or sanding stick and bevel the edges. Just looking at them like this, it might not look like a big difference. But if you stack them, unbeveled versus beveled, you can see a bigger difference. So I bevel one by one, and soon I will be done. Well, depends on how many I made. This will take so long. Next time I'm gonna wear gloves because this foam dust itches. Next step is to add the brick texture, and this is where the genius comes in. You take each square and file in an off-center line on each side of the brick stack, and then when you glue them, you flip them so the lines alternate. If the squares aren't too different in size, you can always take multiple ones and just scratch in the line. And after all that work, I have 6 pillars that needs to be glued together. It's starting to look pretty good, but I need to cover the top and bottom, because if the top of the brick stack is exposed, it breaks the illusion of brickwork. For that, I cut out slightly bigger squares and bevel the edges, that I then texture with my trusty tinfoil ball. Oops, I almost forgot to texture the bricks. Now, let's see how those pillars look in situ. Still a bit plain. Maybe a door right here, so the staircase is actually leading to something. A lot of my projects aren't really planned, they're more like fly by the seat of my pants. But that has worked out so far, so let's continue. So anyways, to make the door, I take a steel wire brush and scratch up the foam board. This makes for excellent wood texture. If you were to ask me what scale I made this to, I couldn't tell you. It's just wing it, and it works out somehow. I glue one of the doors ajar. This brings a bit more dimension to the whole thing. The other one, I just glue flat. Now that the details are done, I can start on the main body. I'm starting with the bigger flat parts of the stairs. After that is done, let's see the progress. It's shaping up nicely, but it's not a staircase yet. So let's make the stairs. To make the steps, I cut out thin strips of foam that I then cut to the length I need. I then add the lines. I use a small file, just like I did with the bricks. I just need to remember that when I glue them, I flip them so the lines don't match. In hindsight, I should have made the strips wider. This would have made it much easier to glue, but I fixed it a bit by adding some support along the way. So the stairs are ready, but I need to texture the big flat parts. But I'm not 100% sure what look I want. So I made this little stone texture sample thingies that I can refer to. One side is plain and one is with cracks and distressing. I find it easier to decide on something if I have a physical example in front of me. Let's go with this one. After marking out 1-inch slabs for the sides, I score the foam with my trusty X-Acto knife. And then I just eyeball the grid pattern. Just so it's about 1 inch between the lines, then I use a marker to widen them. After the lines are done, I put down the stone texture with tinfoil, and then I work with my X-Acto blade to create cracks and damage so it looks old and decrepit. Now that the separate parts are done, I can start assembly, and this is where I think I show most ingenuity. I use the grid of my cutting mat and a tape down ruler as a guide, and then I tape the first piece down and start gluing. All this so I can get the model to the specific measurements of the terrarium. And it got even more ridiculous as I had to glue the second part. And all this because I didn't want to use hot glue, since hot glue is water soluble and won't hold in the terrarium. After adding some supportive walls, I cover them in foam bricks. These are the same bricks as I used for the dice tray project. If you're wondering about the hole in the wall, it's for the spider to crawl into. She could use this as a hide or something. Function and aesthetics is the name of the game. Speaking of function, this is around the time that I thought, am I doing this all wrong? Am I hindering my spider from living a good life? Am I gonna end up in one of those videos where people talk about how people keep their pets and that they're doing it wrong? And I even thought about not uploading this video since I don't want to perpetuate misusing your pets for content. So I decided to cut a good bit of my model off to give more normal ground to the spider. Because in the end, I'm a pet owner first and a model maker second. Unless you know exactly what you're doing, don't do this kind of thing. I made sure all the products I use are safe for pets and made sure all of my spider's needs are met with this model. This is a long rant, but I felt it necessary to talk about since people might see this video and replicate it without the knowledge necessary, and they'll end up hurting their tarantula or other pet. Now that the bricks are dry and the model is fixed, it's time to make some stone railing. I don't know if OSHA applies to 8-legged creatures that can climb walls, but I'm not gonna chance it. I use blue foam to make the base and the middle part of the rails, and then go back to using foam board for the top. It's time to finalize the building section and glue all the parts down. I'm giving the model a hefty coat of Mod Podge so it can be primed. After using a primer that is made for XPS foam, I can start painting. Primer is necessary to make paint stick better to the model, so you can then use varnish to lock in the acrylic to make an acrylic paint sandwich. After the base layer is grey on the model, I go back with a lighter grey to add some depth to the paint job before I add my wash. I always found mimicking textures and color to be fascinating, to try making something unnatural look natural. It's a really good skill to have when making models. Lastly, I dry brush the rock to add those highlights that it needs, and then the paint job is done. To finalize the look, I add some flocking before I finish the whole thing in a matte water-based polyurethane varnish. That is a mouthful. And then, B-roll. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you like the content I make. It does take a lot of work to get these videos made, and I'm still learning, but it's still very fun to do. I appreciate every like and everyone who subscribes, so stick around for the next video I make, and have a lovely day.